We aren't this journey. Like, of course, we're here, but it's not who we truly are. We're here to learn, and it gives us an eagle's eye view of this journey, and it makes it a little more bearable that there's so much more hope and so much more faith and so much more joy that we can experience. It doesn't have to always be heavy. Now, of course, there are times where I'm just as human as anyone else, of course. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going through this, or not again. And I feel
Yes.
those emotions, I feel that heaviness. But because of the tools that I've been given, because of the tools that have been offered, I can move through it a lot easier to come into remembrance of who I am quicker. And I love that
Mm,
aspect because even Christ taught in parables. The glory of
mhm.
parables is that we could have 10 people in the room reading that same holy text and get totally
Mhm.
different things for them because they're in to their own space. So even
Mhm.
Christ taught that, taught the significance
Mhm.
of going within to find healing instead of always
Yes.
looking outward.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel your spiritual healing path has affected your personal relationships? How has that changed your relationships?
I think that it gives me, well, when I'm authentic about myself, which I still sometimes I feel like kind of worried to fully express who I am, only because I have that fear of rejection, which I'm working on it.
Mm,
That's part of my healing journey. But it almost helps me feel more. There's a couple of things here is I can see someone's experience and see maybe if someone's wounding me because they're wounded. It kind of helps me see an eagle's eye view that it's not always about me. That maybe something
mhm,
that keeps coming up is maybe their insecurity or something that they're battling, and it has nothing to do with me. So I can't take it personally. But it also has really helped, like, even with my husband, it's really helped me and him explore each other and gain a better understanding of each other in a totally different way. And we can relate on a different level because we're able to say, hey, this is just this journey, like, this is just this physical moment,
mhm.
but we're so much more than that. And it almost brings more of a sweetness to relationships as well, where it's like, oh, okay, I want to be around this person because I have this physical journey with them and I want to love who they are completely without having to hold back all these heavy emotions. And of course, those still come up, but it's almost like delivering messages. You would be surprised at how many people maybe weren't in communication with their loved one who had
Mhm.
passed and they've he carried years and years and years of grief.
Yeah.
And it almost has really helped me see, why not be present? And I know a lot of people have this complaint about me is that I don't always reply back on messages, and I'm trying to get better. But when my grandma Burling passed, I was covered in guilt because every time she would talk to me,
Mm.
bless her heart, she would literally say the same four stories. Like, it was always, I could say it word for
Right.
word. But whenever I was around her, she would start talking and I'd get on my phone and I'd start texting, or I'd get on social media and start scrolling. And it was after that that I decided, of course, I'm not perfect at this, but I want to be present when I'm with people. And so a lot of times I won't have my phone on me as much because I'm trying to be present with them. And that might make other people
Mhm.
frustrated or like, how come you not text me back? I always try to in the time frame that I have, but
Mhm.
also why not be with our loved ones? Why not give ourselves the permission to connect to someone? Why not, instead of scrolling on social media, you sit with your kid and read? Or you go outside and jump on the trampoline with your child? Or maybe you decide, instead of feeling sorry for yourself and scrolling online, it's like, I'm going to call up some of my best friends and I'm going to do something. Instead of feeling like I'm isolated and alone, why not focus on those connections? Because that's what we
Mhm.
came here to experience. And time again, I have our loved ones always say, these were the things that brought me the most happiness. And it was never something that they had or that they
Mhm.
did or the checklist of things. it was the memories and the connections that they had. And that's it.
Yes. Yes. I love too how you mentioned that the regret or the sadness usually comes from not from those who have passed over, um, from either not forgiving or coming into a healthy relationship with the loved ones that they passed before those things were resolved.
Yeah.
And also uh, giving someone their full attention. They weren't fully present, or they didn't appreciate or have the gratitude when they were there. It's like these are the subject matters that keep coming up, and how important it is to make those connections and to be fully present with someone. And it's like one of the greatest gifts that you can ever give someone is your 100% full attention.
That
There
is
is
true.
no greater gift than giving someone your full attention, not be thinking about other things that you got to do or go places you got to go or being on your phone, but just being fully present. Giving somebody all of your attention like that is so fulfilling
I just
to the
want to be
heart and the
loved.
soul. Yeah, we
Yeah.
just want to be loved. And so I find that so cool. So you would say that the lessons that you've learned spiritually with your relationships is to be 100% present,
Yeah.
to make sure that you make efforts to truly connect with those that you love, friends, family, building fun memories together through those connections. Um, Another one is coming into remembrance for yourself has helped you remember who they are as well, and
Yeah.
understanding that you're, even though you may be feeling at times intense feelings, you realize that you're really so much bigger than that, and they're so much bigger than that. So it really
Absolutely.
deepens that connection and intimacy in
Yeah.
relationships as well.
And the last thing I would add to that um, is also boundaries are needful.
And then the boundaries,
Boundaries are
yes,
necessary.
they
And
are.
and I'll tell you, when I have sessions, there's sometimes where maybe even just yesterday, where someone I was working with hadn't talked to her dad in a while. And he was very abusive, very emotionally abusive,
Mm,
alcoholic, all these heavy things. And her ancestors said, "Hey, we want to tell you that your boundaries are very healthy and we know it's exactly what you need. And if you ever feel like it's not serving you anymore, then maybe it's time to open that back up." But there are times and there are people where sometimes we need a healthy distance so that it doesn't pull us away from our journey. And that doesn't mean you've given up or you don't care about them. And it's kind of counterproductive because we're taught you have to love everyone. Well, sometimes the best way
mhm,
to love someone is by having a proper distance or a proper boundary so that when you can be there with them, you can be fully present and love them instead of feeling over
mhm,
exuded or your stress is overwhelmed or you're around them and you don't want to be around them. Like, why not give it to yourself and that person to say, hey, I might need to take a little break or I need to take a step back and focus on yourself for a little bit. But always know that like cutting someone off is totally different than having a healthy boundary. Cutting someone
yes.
off, you're going to be left with grief, guilt if they pass. You're going to be like,
Mhm.
why was I so
The
selfish?
regret's gonna haunt you.
Yeah, but if you
Mhm,
have this boundary where it's like, I love them and they know that I love them, but I need space for myself, it gives you also power within yourself. But when it comes to spiritual gifts, you have to have that self power.
you
And
do.
that was one thing is when I got started, I am so grateful for my family. They're so supportive. And I use their support to keep me going. I would say, hey, I'm really nervous about this. And my sister would say, you're doing such a good job. You got this. And it was what I needed.
Wow. Mhm,
And I also realized that I got wounded so much quicker because I didn't have that full grounding for myself. I was relying on their grounding, their choice of me,
mm,
their support was my
yeah.
support. It was my strength instead of it being my strength was my strength.
Wow.
And it was such an amazing lesson. And I'm so grateful
Mhm,
for my supporters, my family, my husband. Oh my gosh, they're so supportive. And I feel for people who maybe are on the spiritual path and don't have the support that they would wish that they did. And I think that goes back into like we came here to learn certain lessons. And I had my fair share of people that I was with, or friendships or relationships that weren't supportive. And I learned from that. And then I also said, I need something else. And that's just my journey. That might not be everyone's journey. But what I've loved is you and I have been doing a Gifts of the Spirit class. Well, you've been leading most of it, but I taught a little bit of it. And it was really helping the women really step into who they were and trusting that. And I remember we talked about all the different clairs, how you feel things, sensing, feeling, knowing. And then we also talked about like mediumship and then divination using cards or whatever it is that they might be drawn to. And it was so fun to see them stand in power on their own.
It was.
And to be ignited with fire because they stepped into that and they trusted themselves. And that's what we're called to do. And that's what spiritual gifts should be, is an exciting adventure, as well as finding people to help guide you to connect back into your space, to pull back your power and your strength.
I love that. I love how you brought that up, because a lot of people, when they think of developing their psychic gifts or gifts of spirit, they think of it as it's almost like a magic trick. It's something that they're just going to develop a tool and they just do it. They don't realize that the core of gifts of spirit is remembrance. It's really cultivating that inner connection to yourself first, and connecting in with your intuition and being provided tools and ways that you can do that, and strengthening that knowing. And then all of a sudden, guess what happens? All the channels start to open up.
Yeah.
And you're coming from that space because you're reconnected back into your multidimensional self, who you really are. And when you connect back into the true essence of who you are, it'll open up all those clairs. It will open up your mediumship. And then it's just getting brave, like the process that you were talking about. It's like just getting brave and following that intuition and stepping out, taking a leap of faith and trusting that intuition. And the more you do it, the stronger it gets. It's just like a muscle.
Before you were physical, this spiritual connection was flowing through you. It was just who you were.
It's who you.
There's no separation. It's the body, it's the mind, it's the labels of society that make us put a block on it. We are spiritual gifts. We are spirit before anything.
Yep.
And that's been such a huge remembrance and a reminder. And I'm excited for us to kind of jump into your journey as well, which will be on the next podcast. Is we're going to be really diving in.
Part 2.
Yeah, we're going to be diving in and exploring about your journey. You know, we thought that we needed 2 different ones because there is so much to it. And I feel like we needed that time to dive in. And so I'm excited for us in this next part to talk about your journey as well.
Oh, I love that. And I just so enjoyed listening to you, Jenn. I mean, you're such an inspiration.
Thank you.
You really are an angel on earth for me, and such a mirror back to me of wisdom, of love, of truth, of light, and of courage. So thank you so much for
that means so much
sharing your gifts. Yes.
Thank you. I received that.
Take it all in.
Yes, absolutely.